I didn't know about confounding. I didn't understand the concept, but in my mind, this made no sense. And I was just like questioning everybody without any knowledge, just like logic in my mind was like, this is not it. I kept thinking about why people become addicted to things. And it doesn't matter what the substance is. And I've always thought about this, like, just pick your poison.
You know, too. Now she has a mark. Correlation is not equal to causation. Okay, so. Today, on a cold day in Indianapolis, Indiana, we have a great pleasure of talking to Paola Matty Mora. She goes by a short name Paola Matty. So she is a fresh assistant professor at Indiana University School of Medicine in the Department of Psychiatry. She has been there for a few years. She was doing her postdoctoral fellowship after finishing her PhD at Indiana University Bloomington. She has a PhD in epidemiology. And we'll be talking to her today about the, Camille, you called it a squiggly career. Was it the squiggly career?
Yes, it is a squiggly career. And I've read a book which was called like that. And a squiggly career apparently is their thing right now in the world. So you in a massively linear world that we have, a world that loves straight lines, apparently squiggly is the thing to be right now, and that's where you get the most success and the most value of a life. So I've called it, but actually it wasn't me. I've read it somewhere. But yeah, and Paula, it's so nice to welcome you on Two Poles Apart. We had so many wonderful guests on our show, but I think this time around we might actually be in trouble, because I think from the bio and from the conversations had with Jarek, what I'm hearing is actually you're looking at understanding of how people make decisions, and if they make decisions, it's probably the bad ones as well. Is that correct?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And yes, kind of. I like to study how people make decisions, particularly adolescents. And we'll go deep into these, but I think we cannot say that we make a bad decision. We just wait out until the things that feels the right thing for us.
So in a sense, it's not a bad decision. It's more, we don't know the consequences. Might be, yes? That's the...
Correct.
Yeah, this is... But before we go there, if you don't mind, Camille, if you don't mind also, Paola, if you could tell us a bit about yourself. It's, you know, I made a brief introduction, but you have a very interesting history. And, you know, it's like go as deep and as far back as you would like. But if you could tell us a bit about yourself, that would be great.
Sure. So I think it's interesting that Camille was talking about this book and that it's how people are perceiving that it should be the way. For me, this was never intentional. This was just how life played. And I learned many years ago that you just have to be open to the opportunities that you get. So I'll try to not take 3 hours explaining this. But my background is in nutrition. I did a bachelor degree in Costa Rica, where I'm from. But that was not my idea. I wanted to be a medical doctor. And well, if we go a little farther, I wanted to be an actress or a painter. But my mom didn't let me. I think she was right. I don't see myself like that anymore. But so there were two options, very different in my mind when I was 17. It was either study arts or study medicine. First one was a no-go, so I decided to study medicine. And I was very stubborn. And until this day, I'm very stubborn. And I wanted to go to the public school, which is the University of Costa Rica. And it's the best, sorry to others, but for me, it's the best university in the country. And so to get into the process, you have to do a test. They will give you a score. And there are two scores that they take into account, or at least that happened many, many years ago.
Not so many years ago, but
One that will help you get into the university, and the other one that will place you into the path or like the career that you decide upon. I had a very good score to get into the university. I didn't have a good score to get into medical school, but I had a good score to get into nutrition. And my very silly and naive mind thought that I was going to study something that the first year was exactly the same as the medical students had. And that was nutrition. And then very quickly, I learned that studying biology and chemistry and physics in the university is not the same as when you were in high school. And I was an A+ student in high school, and I was having a hard time in the university. So so my plan initially was, okay, gotta get into this. I'm going to have A's, and then I'm gonna move from one degree to the other. The thing is that when you do that, you only have 2 spots to do that in the inside of the system. And of course, I didn't have the grade for that. Even when the first time that I went to register, I did everything in disorder for the nutritional syllabus. And my advisor at the time, she was very mad at me. And she wrote in my file, she's not taking these courses because she wants to be in medicine. And so once I got into the end of the year and I knew that I wasn't able to move from one to the other, I had to make a decision. Now, the funny thing is that I didn't know what nutrition was. In my mind, these were people that would come and tell you to eat lettuce and drink water and be very thin. That was it. It did, and it wasn't in my vibe. I wanted to study medicine and I wanted to do pediatrics and then do neonatology. That was my plan. So again, I had this like 2 rows. My mom gave me the opportunity to go to a private school, but it was very expensive, or I would stay in nutrition. And stubborn me said, no, I want a degree from here. I'll make it work. And so finally, I took the time to look into what nutrition meant. And I kind of like it. So I was like, okay, this wasn't what I was planning, but that sounds right. I'm going to do clinical nutrition and then I'm going to focus in pediatrics. And so I kept going on the career, got to the last year where you have to start figuring out what you want to do. And one thing that I knew that I didn't like was public health. And you're going to see that this is a very recurrent thing in my story. And so I was like, okay, public health, like community service, it was very tough because in my mind it was going like house from house, just like knocking at doors and making like surveys to people, and I didn't like that. But I had the opportunity to work with the one that I consider my first mentor, which coincidentally she studied at IU, and she was a behavioral scientist. And so I started working with her doing this obesity prevention project, and I was going from school to school, and we were trying to make kids move and eat healthy while they were playing. So I also, at this time, you have to do, so in Costa Rica, you have 2 degrees. You have your bachelor's degree, and then you have something that is called licenciatura. So it's like you get in the license. And for that, you either have to write a thesis or you have to do a practicum. And in my mind, I was like, oh no, I'm not going to do a thesis because they are going to ask me to do statistics. And I don't understand any of that. And I hate that. I can't, like, a chi-square was the worst thing that you could ask me to do because that was very complex.
It's good to learn something more about, your approach to it's great.
So I decided to do a practicum, went to a rural area in primary health care. And what I was doing, nobody had done it. And so my committee at the end were like, you know what, you're going to write a thesis too. was purely qualitative. And so I ended up doing the practicum and writing the thesis. So by
so
then,
Paula, basically, because I was forming this version of truth that your career actually you swapped it around. It was avoidance of certain things which got you into the thing, but you ended up actually doing both of it, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, okay.
yeah, and this keeps going. So at the end, I ended up staying doing prevention interventions. I worked for about a year. And then my then mentor, who was my boss, came to the office one day and she put the GRE on top of the table. And she was like,
So let's explain. The GRE, it's a graduate record examination. It's something you have to, it's an exam you have to write in the States to get into graduate school.
so
Just for our audience, you know, our humongous
Jarek
audience.
always does it. He's like a little, you know, he just shows up with a abbreviation, description, and all of the important information. Thanks for that, Jarek.
And so I remember seeing those. I was very thankful, but in my mind, I didn't have an idea. Like there were no opportunities. And so I thank her and I just avoid the books for months.
Okay.
And there was a point where I was like, well, maybe if I go to England or maybe Spain and I'll do like pediatric nutrition, I'm going to be clinical. I was still in the idea of doing clinical. And a few months later, one of our colleagues came to the office and she told us that the the Central American and Panama Institute of Nutrition had sent an invite to the university for this epidemiology workshop. And so the topics were around, it was nutritional epidemiology, but they were around school-based interventions. So she was doing something different. She had a good communication with the institute, and she ended up saying, I think it would be better for this lab to go instead of me. So there were two of us, one that was a faculty, I was just a collaborator. And at the end, she gave me the spot. She had just had a kid, and I had been longer in the project than her. So I went to Guatemala. And this is the first time I encountered epidemiology. And I had no clue what they were talking about. So they were talking about designs, and they were talking about sample size, and they were talking about confounding. And this was all very new to me. I remember just like writing out. Just a side note, everybody knew each other there. So there were people from El Salvador.
Just to show, you know, now she has a mark. Correlation is not equal to causation. Okay, so
Oh, brilliant.
long way from not knowing about epidemiology to, you know.
Yeah. Everybody knew each other. I was the new one. But I remember my mentor saying, you have, like the two persons that were given the workshop, one was from UWash and the other one was from University of Michigan.
University of Washington and University of Michigan.
And so she was like, talk to them, just like make a good impression. I think this would be beneficial for you. And so the workshop was divided in two. The first half was more about theory, and the second half was about projects that they were presenting. And again, I had no clue what I was talking about, but I think I followed a lot of my intuition, and I started questioning all of these projects. And so I remember one where they were comparing one school that was from the rural area versus one from the urban area. And they were just like putting them together. I was like, but these are different. Like, how are you saying that one is bigger than the other? This makes no sense. I didn't know about confounding. I didn't understand the concept, but in my mind, this made no sense. And I was just like questioning everybody without any knowledge, just like logic in my mind was like, this is not it. And so I got an invitation to sit with these two professors because it seems that my questions were the right questions. So one of them had something that is called a Fogarty grant at the University of Michigan. And they made it look like it was very easy, which was not. But this is where the whole journey of grad school started. Because he was like, if you have a decent score, will bring you. And it was like, it sounded very fairy tale-y. Like, I will pay for your airfare, we'll pay for your computer, we'll pay everything for you to study here. But this was a PhD program, and I didn't have even, like, I only had a bachelor degree. So I wasn't competent enough for the other students, that I ended up not getting it. I came back to Costa Rica. I told all of this to my mentor, and she's like, "So, are you finally going to study for this?" So I started studying for the GRE, and then I learned that there were no appointments for the exam in Costa Rica. And so by then, my mentor decided to be a visiting scholar in IU for a month. I called her and I'm like, I'm not going to do this because there are no appointments until January and the deadline is December. And she's like, just come here. They have appointments all day long. And I flew to Indiana just to take the test. And so my mentor, I call her my mama hen because she's always like going around with her little chicken. And she's always said that I'm her rebel chicken because I do whatever I want, whenever I want. But she, like, I flew to Indiana. And by then she's like, okay, so I got an appointment with you, for you with the chair of the epidemiology department because I want you to talk to have other options. I know this is not flashy University of Michigan, but this could be a good place for you. This is a very new department. Let's talk to him and see if there is a possibility. So I took the test. I did awful in the test. That's where I learned that I knew it before, but this was like the reality. You think about like stage fright, it's like test fright, like bad, like 10 percentile bad. That's how bad I did in that
In
test.
both math and English?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's how bad because I was panicking.
I can see that.
Oh, okay.
And so,
So that was a
That's
proper,
where the story gets really
panic
interesting.
mode. Yeah.
yes. So I did the test in the morning and I had a meeting with the chair in the afternoon. I got there, I'm completely deflated because I failed the test. I'm not going to get in any school. And you have to have at least 50 percentile to get in. And so I remember sitting in his office and having my mentor next to me. And he would ask me things and I was like, yes, no, I was completely out. And she was the one. She knows how to do this and she will do this. And she has been like, she was the one selling me. And I will forever be thankful for that. And maybe a couple of years after, when I was working with this faculty, he told me, you're a very bad interviewer. You did such a bad job. And I was like, I know, but there were a lot of things going on that day.
That's incredible.
So at the end, I took the test 2 more times. I learned that, I don't know if this is right anymore, but as long as you have a score, you can submit the application. But normally the files are not looked up until way later. And so I submit the bad score, and then I took the test twice. And so they took in the scores for the last test.
That's usually, it's very often what we do in the admissions, look at the best score because, there are different situations, yes. So it's not the average, it's not the worst, it's actually the best that we look at, so.
Which makes,
I imagine
which
you
makes
scored
a
better.
lot of...
Yeah, I did. I was getting better. Like the last time, because the second time I didn't do a great score, but it was better. The third one, I was like, I'm going to let it to fate. And I know we're going to talk about decision making, but like sometimes you just have to let it go. And I was like, I'm going to let this go. If it's meant, it's meant. If it's not, I'll try it later. And then I did a good score. It wasn't the great, like it wasn't 90 percentile, but it was enough to get into school. And so I ended up I applied to the doctorate, to the PhD program. I didn't apply to the master's program. And IU told me, well, you cannot get into the PhD without a master's. this is our offer. You will do the master's in 2 years, and then we'll let you keep going on your PhD. But you have to succeed and have a very good score in your master's for us to keep that a promise. And I did. So that's how I jumped from nutrition to epidemiology. But in my mind, I was still doing nutritional epidemiology.
That's
So
that's incredible. That's just like a mixture of plans, coincidence, character, bold moves, and whatever. And it's only part of the story. Yeah? Brilliant.
But if you think about it, it's like this is this kind of the squiggly career path. I think this is amazing that, it's because we all have opportunities that kind of they're presented to us, or they present themselves to us, but it's actually jumping on it, because, you could have said, well, no, I failed the first time, I'm not doing that again. Yes. But you persevered. And this is one of those things. I think maybe I'm generalizing here, but, if successful people, what happens is they, so to say, take the bull by the horns. Yes. It's, you don't get, you get knocked down, but you get up. I think that's a song. But, it's, sorry, continue, please.
it's true. I think you're putting in very nice words. For me, it's just like I'm stubborn, but yes.
No,
So
you persevere.
true. Yeah. So after, took a couple of luggages, hop into a plane, and then came by myself to the US. And then I realized the huge decision that I had made. And so it was either, I think this is how I try to treat life. You either panic because this is a new thing, or you take it as an adventure and you enjoy the ride with all the goods and the bads. And that's how I did it. So I finished my master's, then started my PhD. Throughout the process, my mom passed. It was my first semester. Like, I was starting my second semester when my mom passed. And again, this was like a big decision, because in my mind, I was trying to decide, should I go back to Costa Rica and take care of my family? Should I stay? And there were very nice people in Costa Rica who told me, we'll just take you, like, we'll just like knock you out and put you in a plane again, because your mother wanted you to do this. And she was so proud of you, and she was so excited for everything that could come. You are not staying here. You're going back. So came back. They were right. I think it's been a good thing. But so I came back, finished my master's, then started my PhD. But things were not going well. And it wasn't going well because I wasn't well. And so here, perseverance or stubbornness or whatever you want to call it. But it took me to hit the floor very hard to understand that, and probably we'll talk about this later, but to understand that it's not just about going and going, it's also about being okay while you're going and just taking care of yourself. And so the biggest hit was that I failed my qualifying exams.
Can we stop it here just for a moment?
Yes.
So again, for our audience, in the PhD programs, there is something, it's almost like the rite of passage. You have to pass this qualifying exam to continue in a PhD program to write your dissertation. The good thing is you have 2 chances.
Okay, so get to the test, been studying for months, and I panicked again in the middle of the test. I remember, so at that time, I don't know how it's now, but at the time they would give you like a USB, and you would put it in the computer, and then you do the test, and then you give it back. And there were 2 tests, one for epidemiology, one for biostatistics. When I got to the biostatistics one, I remember seeing the test and not knowing what they were talking about. I was completely blank. And I kept thinking, like, I just wanted to cry. I was having a panic attack in the middle. And I kept thinking, like, I'm just going to take it out and just give it to him. It's been 10 minutes since the test started. And then I kept thinking, no, let's try it. Just let's try it. And then I finished I had the whole time. I didn't answer half of the things. Like the test was half blank because I couldn't think. And I gave the key and I was like, I know I failed this. Like there is no way that you can pass when you have half of your test blank. So I went back to my apartment. I cried a lot because this was the first real time that I failed into something. And then by then, my advisor was leaving the university. And so this was a very complex moment where I showed to the department that I didn't know what I was doing. And so nobody wanted to be my advisor. I had failed a test. My advisor was leaving and I had no clue what to do. And so I just I went home. I cried at home. I went to Costa Rica and then came back with a plan, went to one of the committee members and asked her to sign for my registration, talked to another faculty just to ask what could I do and how could I prepare better. I had a not very nice experience with one of them where they were like, this is not for you. You should be going out. You should think about another path or maybe something different. And here my stubbornness comes in. And I was like, no, this is what I thought I wanted to do. So I'm staying. And so I get out. And there was one faculty that I used to be a teaching assistant for. And I went and knocked at his door. And I was completely deflated. And he was like, what happened? What do you need? He was the only one who actually thought that I was somewhat good. And I told him, I don't have an advisor. Nobody wants to be my advisor. I just need somebody to sign this for me. I'll figure it out. And he was like, I'll be whatever you need me to be for you. Mm-hmm. And then he became my advisor. And so that was a year of healing for me. From an academic standpoint, learning that there were things that I didn't understand. And then from a mental health standpoint, I started going to therapy and working on myself because there were a lot of things that I needed to heal. And so after a year, took my calls again and I aced the tests. Mm-hmm. It was, and so that faculty that came to me that wasn't very convinced that I could do this told me, you should prove to all of us what are you made of. Mm-hmm. And so that was a little pat in the back of saying okay, it wasn't about them believing in me, it was about me believing in me. And then my second advisor left the program. And so with this one, so before that, while I started the PhD, I like to make things complicated. And so I wanted to learn something that I didn't know. And in nutrition, the only thing that you didn't study much is the brain. And I thought it was fascinating. So I was like, okay, so I'm going to take all these nutritional factors and I want to see how that affects the brain. At that time, I was like, well, maybe we can move from kids to elderly. I'm going to do Alzheimer's disease. That sounds like a fun thing to study. But life decided that I'm good with kids and adolescents, and I stayed in tract. And so with my second mentor, that's when I was like, he told me, so there is this data set in the United States, but it's kids, but they have so much information about the brain. You have a lot of experience with kids. Why don't you give it a try? And that we can kind of wiggle it in. And I was like, you know what? Yes, let's do that. It sounds like a good plan. I was already doing a minor degree in neuroscience by then, and so it kind of fit. Do you have a question? I saw your face.
No. It's please continue.
Can you actually tell when Jarek has a question from his face? I couldn't tell that.
We don't know each other long enough, Camille. Yes, so Paola and I have known each other for a while, so okay, that's the reason.
That's true.
And so my second mentor, my second PhD advisor, he was leaving. I already knew that I wanted to do some neuro stuff for my dissertation. And this is where ER comes into the equation. He was the expert matter. And so I started talking with the other advisor, and I'm like, how about if I ask Dr. Yaroslav to be my advisor? And he's like, well, he's very tough. Like, he's gonna be expecting a lot of productivity from you. And I'm like, I already had one advisor like that. It's gonna be fine. So I talked to Yarek. And then he was like, for sure, I'm gonna be in your committee. Let me think about being your advisor. And then I don't know, something happened there, because a few days later I got an email from him saying like, yeah, I'll be your advisor. And so it went from a girl who didn't want to do a chi-square to working with a biostatistician.
It is. Oh my God! Yeah, it's how do you link that in the life? It's brilliant. Yeah. And Jarek,
And so-
what was the decision? Why did you do it?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will blame it on my old age. I don't remember. So no, it's by that time. So I think we already overlapped at the university for a few years. I've seen you in a few presentations, few talks, and maybe your spirit of asking questions. It's like, because, I usually I organized seminars for the first 2 years when I was at the university where Paola was studying. I think you arrived 1 year before me at the university, 2015?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I joined in 2016, and for the first 2 years, I was actually a seminar organizer. And there was the student, so you were still studying with your first advisor, yes, then. And there was the student who, not always, but sometimes would ask a question. I'm like, that's an interesting question. So even though we didn't, I don't think you took any courses from me, but, I knew you from the seminars. So, when the things, happened a few years after, I was like, oh yeah, that was the student. She was asking very good questions. So that for sure played part in my decision to to agree to be an advisor. But I told Paola, look, you have to promise me something. I'm not planning to leave the university. So even though, the first two advisors left, don't count on it. Right. I'm not leaving. I will get you to the end.
You're breaking the pattern on this. But now I was interested. That's why I asked the question, Paul, as well, because I know Jarek a bit, and I know he likes to ask questions, and I know he likes to get to the bottom of the source of everything. And even around the world, wherever we travel or see the world differently. And when you started to talk about what you call stubbornness and the natural way of just challenging everything which is just not logical, I just felt like that might be a bit of a thing. So I think you're actually good in interviews. You're just doing them differently. You do it like subconsciously through presentations, maybe not in the interview room, because I see a small pattern. Well done.
So yeah, what else? So we started working together, and I started getting further and farther from nutrition and taking other opportunities. I became what do you call it? A fellow in one of the predoctoral grants that was focused on substance use, and that's where it started piquing into my interest. And so, by the end of the PhD, when I was writing my dissertation, the recurring question was like, how can I combine these things? I know that it's not very traditional in academia and to have so many skills. And it's almost frowned upon because it seems that you're diluting yourself into so many subjects. But the way that I think about this is you should be an interdisciplinary person. And it's not about me as an expert matter, is what do I need to answer a specific problem. And so this took me to my postdoc, because I was like, okay, so after doing this fellowship, I kept thinking about why people become addicted to things. and it doesn't matter what the substance is. And I've always thought about this, like, just pick your poison, because it could be a behavior, it could be a substance, it could be food, whatever it is. And so I interview with who is my boss now, and she was my mentor during the postdoc, and she's an expert on decision making, and but she's a psychiatrist. And I remember in my interview, she was like, "Your CV is full of nutrition. How are you gonna fit here?" And so I looked at her as like, you know what? The same systems in the brain that are affected by substances are the same systems in the brain that are affected when you have obesity or when you have like a food cravings or binging. So I just want to understand why, like, this is like the old time question, and I won't be able to answer it because it's too big, but why some people would go to, like, will be craving sugar, but they might smoke cannabis, and this won't be like a thing for them, and others will be alcohol but not food. So I think this is like for me, this is like the biggest question that I know I'm never going to answer. I have a little...
If I can jump in here, do you think sometimes it's the opportunity, like if you don't have access to something, it's impossible to get addicted to that because you cannot experience that. But in a different circumstances, for example, it's like, this is from the old times, this is from Poland, where we didn't really have, like, beyond cigarettes, well, food, yes, was there, alcohol. There were no other substances of abuse really in the, like, you couldn't get them. But, if there was, like, if you had on the table, 10 substances, maybe you could find the one that's, well, for some people, it's the best for them. What do you think about, like, the choice? Is it truly the choice that we're making? So let's say sweets and tobacco or smoking cigarettes.
I think it's a mix of things. I think this is why I'm not going to be able to answer it in my life. I think it's a mix of things. It's about your environment, how you were raised, what were rewarded or, like, given more value to. But also there is a little bit of, like, the neurochemistry. So, for example, think about some people that they would smoke cannabis and they would have the worst sensation ever because their receptors are, like, in overdrive, and that's why they don't like it. But others would feel pleasure when they smoke. And so there's not, and this is the beauty of epidemiology, there is not one single cause that would take you to a specific addiction. It's a mix of things. It's part of your biology and your genetics. It's part of your environment. It's part of the stressors that you have. We cannot fit everybody into one single box. So at the end, once I finished explaining her that, she was like, when can you start? And I think it was a very, like, the whole postdoc process was a very nice thing, because I was the weird thing in the lab. Everybody, it's either a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and I was the epi who had a lot of knowledge in biostatistics. And so I became the expert matter into a subject that the others didn't have as much experience in. And at the beginning, I remember being very, very careful about how did I say things, and how, if I wanted to actually say that something was wrong. And I think that by the end of the postdoc, I was just asked, my boss in a meeting would say, like, so what do you think? Or, like, ask her, she knows. So I think it's kind of like a little bit of, like, the evolutionary process of feeling more sure about how much I knew. I still don't know anything. I think you'll never know.
You don't know everything, but you know a lot. And I think what you described is like finding your niche as well, because if everybody was doing the same things, in a group, in a lab, it's like, why do you need 5 people specializing in this one thing that, you know, one person it's, or 2 people maybe are sufficient to? But
Yeah.
I think you felt a very nice kind of part of the kind of research that others didn't have an expertise in. Yeah.
And I think it
But
was also
it's
very. Go ahead. Sorry.
but is that actually Paul, when we talk about the number of things you did or were exposed to or actively worked on and whatever, do you think actually doing a lot then allows you or enables you to make certain connections which others just don't do by going, you know, with a predefined way or largely predefined way? Do you think, you know, all of the things you did actually got you to a point that you could connect, you know, those two
All the
fields?
dots. I guess. I think I always joke that I'm a little unicorn because I'm just a mix of things. But I guess, yeah, I think the answer I think is yes. I try to think outside of the box, and I try to connect things from a very different perspective. Might not always be the most relevant thing, but having the possibility to put like different little caps throughout makes it like a nice exercise. And I think it's also for me it's very exciting when I'm thinking about a research question, because it's not just one single thing. Like neuroscientists tend to be like very focused in the brain, but they wouldn't think about all the environmental factors. And epidemiologists might not dare to get into the neuroscience of it because it's very daunting. And even the way that you think about how things can potentially affect later in life. So like, I don't do interventions anymore, but I'm always thinking, how will this translate into people? How would we, how like this information, how it's going to affect, or how can we use this information to create an intervention or to help people take better, make better decisions, or to help people prevent them using a specific substance, because that's what I used to do.
So one thing, if I can jump in, and maybe this is again, I'm maybe generalizing sometimes too much, but we live in a era where, especially when we're pursuing a doctorate degree in something, we're specializing so much in an area where only like 5 people in the world can understand even what we're doing. Now, even though there's a lot of talk of interdisciplinary research, but what I find, at least what I found, you know, in my years in academia, is that a lot of that is talk. I think you exemplify, you know, actually this interdisciplinary approach because of experience in a few areas where, and this was one of the points we'll discuss later, it's kind of this crossing the disciplines, but also going with an open eyes into that, maybe from looking at things from a different perspective, that if you are too focused, you cannot see, because, you know, it's just, you know, it was actually funny. Just I will give one example, and maybe we'll take a short break after that. But I was driving here and I was listening to a podcast. What else can you do?
Of course.
And this was about something completely different. I'm not sure I will mention that on this podcast. It was about experiences after taking something. But what the guy said, it's like, imagine you are in a room. There are 4 walls, and you have, you know, so for me, it's like you get more knowledge or you experience something else. It's like being raised from sitting in the room to going kind of up and seeing something beyond the walls. Where, you know, if you were only sitting in the room, if you didn't have this other experience, either through knowledge or through something else, you wouldn't be able to see what's behind those walls. And then you come back, but you had this experience. So you know now that there is something beyond. That it's not only something that's very restrictive, what you have learned, what you have experienced, there's something more.
Yeah. Very, very well said, Jarek. I like it. And I liked connection. You have to send me that podcast for sure. You
Okay,
got me
yeah.
interested right now.